Welcome, guys. It is a pleasure to have you guys here with us for a free GRE prep hour. My name is Whitney, or Whit. You can call me either. I have been a teacher for Manhattan Prep since 2010. I teach the GRE and the GMAT. I teach and tutor about half the time, and then the other half of my work, I work on writing books, working on online materials, doing some filming for various products that we have online. So you might see me around. Yay, I'm glad that you like our Manhattan videos on YouTube. We love them. I'll be honest, these are some of my favorite things to teach because these allow us the space to cover concepts that maybe we don't get to cover in a course or we don't get to talk about as frequently in books. And so I really like these as an opportunity for that. So tonight, I'm excited. Our plan is to talk a little bit about something that isn't quant or verbal. It affects both. And so I wanted to put this up on the screen. Does this sound like any of you? Right? To any of these, you could raise your hand. You can say yes in the chat window. Are any of these things? Yeah, I see lots of blue hands. Yeah. I'll say this. I take tests for a living and I get anxious. Right? Like I take tests, I take GREs and GMATs, and I don't even need to get a score anymore. I've already got my qualified score to teach for this company. So I don't even need the score. And yet I still feel anxious, right? And then add to that for you guys, like all of this, you've got pandemic. So, you know, there's like the wearing of the mask and trying to be in test centers if you're allowed to, or if you're in your own home, it's still stressful because somebody's looking at you and you're trying to get your entire like workstation set up. And so it's very easy for these feelings of anxiety, not just to impact us during the test, but overall, right? Like I know a few of you guys messaged in privately that, you know, it's hard in the middle of a pandemic with this much stuff going on in the world to sort of sit down and focus on your studies. And it's very easy when we're already working at like a partial capacity to think about like, oh God, I can't just sit here and study. Like, what am I going to do? And my mind starts to wander to everything else that's going on, right? Oh, and I guess this would say GRE. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had put GMAT on this little slide. Just kidding. But same idea, right? Same idea. It's so much, right? It's so much. And I try to remind people that when you start studying for the GRE, when you start taking a test, you're basically signing up for a part-time job that not only are you not being paid for, you're paying for it. You're paying someone else to let you do a part-time job, which is crazy, right? And so it's a lot, right? It's a lot to deal with and balance. And so that alone, but then add to it pandemic, right? Add to it quarantine, add to it a lot of the emotional and political issues that are going on in the world right now. There's just a lot. And so I find that a lot of times we're not showing up with our full capacity, and that's we want to be understanding of that. We want to be empathetic, right? I want to have this sort of self-compassion around that. So what we're going to talk about are some pretty simple steps that are some of my favorite for dealing with this sort of thing. So a little bit about me. From about 2006 until maybe a year or so ago, I was a competitive skydiver. And as part of my skydiving, I also worked with like newer jumpers who were like not quite licensed, like brand new jumpers, to try and like help them get comfortable skydiving. And for those of you, has any of you guys ever been on a skydive? Have you guys done any skydiving? I'd love to hear if anybody's been like, I've done it. I did a skydive. I did a tandem. Well, maybe if any of you guys have gone out and done your like bucket list things. Honestly, though, funny enough, Pushkar, I'm afraid of heights too. So just saying. But so it's super cool. But it is nerve-wracking. And one of the things I started to notice as a coach was that the face that people would make in the door at 15,000 feet looks very much like the face that students get when they run into a question that that like feels like a struggle, right? That there's this like, oh God, right. And so there's this panic that likes to set in. Well, then flash forward. And so maybe about 5 years ago, I started teaching yoga, and I noticed that my students were coming into class just, you know, yeah, they wanted to work out, they wanted exercise, but they were also looking for some space from the world, a little bit of a break. Oh, Andrea, that's awesome. That's awesome. your yoga, and for anybody that does yoga, your yoga is probably one of the best tools you could apply to studying. So, right, I had this like skydiving background where I'd worked with a lot of like very high anxiety like skydiving students. And then I had this yoga background where I was working with a lot of like, yoga students, but who were really stressed. I live in an area where I've got Duke University Hospital, UNC hospitals here. I've got RTP. There's like major industry. It's a very competitive space. And so there's a lot of stress. Well, I'd been, I love all the things. I do all the things. It's true, Bushkar. It's true. I do all the things. I also like climbing. That's another place where it like really pays to like find a sense of calm there, right? Because it can be very nerve-wracking to be way up on a wall. So one of the things I started to notice is that there's one trick, and I use it with my skydiving students, and I do it all the time in my yoga classes. And I thought to myself, like, why am I not doing this with my GRE and GMAT students? And so it's this idea of like, can we find a place of calm? Can we find what I call centering? And so by the time we're done here, we're going to talk about some ideas around what may be considered like meditation or mindfulness. For me, I call it centering. Centering is a chance to like call all of those thoughts back into the moment where I need them. And sometimes it's really just as easy as a breath. Interestingly enough, the best trick that we ever learned for our skydiving team was right before we would exit the plane together, we'd all close our eyes, take a big inhale in, a big exhale, and then we'd exit. And it was like this sense of calm, as best as you can be, right, in the middle of a high stress situation. So it'd be the sense of calm. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today and look at some, legitimate tools. So here's the deal. First things first, before you get too far into any of this, one of the things you have to recognize is that we don't get rid of anxiety. Right? We just don't. It doesn't go anywhere. Sometimes brilliance comes from the most interesting places. So I was getting a facial body wrap thing that someone had given me maybe like 5 or 6 years ago as a birthday present. And I remember saying to the woman, like, oh, I just need less stress in my life. And she looked at me and said, well, that's not possible. Life has all kinds of stress in it. You can't have less stress. You just learn to manage it better. And I remember thinking like, wow, that's actually really profound for a person that's putting mud on my face. That's really profound. But it's true, right? But test anxiety is a when, not an if. And it comes down to also when you're studying, like the anxiety around you've read something more than once and it's still not quite sticking, or you just sort of start to go off like, how is my score going to make it to where I need it? I'm taking the test in September, right? Like I got a message about I'm taking the test in September and I need to raise my score 15 points. Like, holy cow, how am I going to do that? And so the thing is that we have to acknowledge that the world is a stressful place and the GRE is no exception. You're going to be anxious because it matters. It matters. The score matters. And so for that reason, you are putting a lot of stock in it right now. And so you're going to second guess. You're probably not going to sleep terribly well the night before. I know I never do. I sleep terribly the night before I have to take an exam. And either the test center or the online logistics, all of that stuff is probably going to be frustrating. And so the first kind of lesson here that I want you to give yourselves is a sense of compassion around the fact that anxiety is coming, right? And I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm saying is like, it's normal. If you start feeling anxious or when you're studying, your mind wanders, like it's normal. It happens to all of us, right? I get anxious taking a test that I don't even have to take, that in some ways I'm just kind of taking for fun, and I'm stressed out about it, right? So cut yourself some slack. Step one, cut yourself some slack. So you can't prevent it, but you can soften around it. You can forgive yourself a little bit for not being like nerves of steel all the time. And you can improve how you handle, like, how is it that you deal with test anxiety? So I want to give you guys a little blurb, right? So how do you think, and there've actually been some studies here, but how do you think it would affect scores if they put the following, what I'm about to give you, as part of the instructions for the GRE? What do you think? Let's see how this might change your feelings about the test. here's the thing, right? Like, well, and so Andrea, I got a great question in the window that's like, I read that a certain level of anxiety is beneficial, but beyond that, it can be damaging. And that's actually true, right? That we can get to a point where anxiety becomes like a paralyzing and we sort of freeze up. But our job is to start to notice anxiety as it begins. And we just want to kind of like breathe into that space. We want to soften into that space, because what often happens, this is my favorite example. Somebody used to tell me this one about riding a bike. And so you want to be a little fluid on a bike. But a friend of mine used to call it the death wobbles, which would be like if you'd clip a rock and it would start to like shimmy the bike. But if you gripped on even tighter and shimmied with it, it would just shimmy, 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 shimmy until like threw you off to the stage. And so what we're looking for is a sense of, can I feel, I like the sort of like sports language around this, can I feel jazzed? Right. So maybe that's like Eliza, you're like, I might feel more anxious. Like, am I anxious enough? Is this enough? What I'd like for you to think about feeling is maybe not like label it with like, I'm anxious, I'm stressed, I'm freaking out, but instead label it a little bit with like, I'm kind of jazzed, I'm excited. Right? Like, yeah, this, like the feelings that give me excitement are some of the same feelings that are going to make us feel anxious. Like they feel the same. The physiological response to excitement and anxiety are the same. They're the exact same. And so one of the things that we can start to think about is that, like, hold on, all of those physiological responses that we keep labeling stress or anxiety or like freaking out, those are the same. The dilating pupils, the increased heart rate, right? Like the increased respiration, like these are all the same things that happen when we get really excited. Right? Like when we're going to see somebody that we really like, or we're going to go do something that we're really excited about, it's the exact same physiological response. So one of the pieces to think about is maybe I can start to language around it a little bit. And that like anxiety isn't a terrible thing. And right, to this, like Andrea's point about like a certain level of anxiety is helpful. If we can start to embrace anxiety as it begins, it's far less likely that we're going to end up in this like death wobbles place where we're like doubling up, freaking out, freaking out, freaking out, freaking out. I posted on that first slide, like, how often do you like ruminate? Do you feel a thought go through? So how often, let's go show of hands, how often have you like gotten into a fight with someone, you know, like a loved one, you've gotten into, you know, like a little tete-a-tete with somebody, and you replay that conversation, right? Maybe they say something that's not super nice, right? So, and you just replay that conversation over and over and over and over. And it just gets worse. It just gets worse. And then you like think like, well, how should I have said that? What should I have done? And right. It's that sort of like rolling back over it. And oh, and Katie, we are going to do a couple towards the end, but mostly just for practice. Yeah, but not very many today. But this idea of rumination, it's not usually the thing that the friend said to you or like your boss or whatever. It's not normally that thing that takes you out. It's that ruminating, spiraling thinking that keeps following, right? That keeps following it. And so one of the things I want you to think about is if we can avoid like spinning off into that story, we can often stay at a level of anxiety that is in fact powerful, that is useful, right? That allows us to do better on the test than before. Oh, that's okay. And TC, if you want to put that in the Q&A so I can make sure and answer it so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle, that'd be awesome. So totally cool. Okay, so my favorite thing is this idea of mindfulness. Again, I call it centering. You can call it meditation, whatever you want. But Merriam-Webster's definition of mindfulness is the practice of maintaining a non-judgmental state of heightened or complete awareness of one's thoughts, emotions, or experience on a moment-to-moment basis. There's a piece here that to me is more important than almost any other word, and it's non-judgmental. We want to think about noticing. I want to invite you to feel this sense of curiosity. Like, what are these feelings? What am I sensing? Am I feeling tired? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Do I need a break? Maybe I need a break. Right? Maybe studying right now isn't a great idea. Maybe what I actually need is to take a nap or go hug my dog. Right? But I'm going to be non-judgmental about it. I don't want to editorialize and say like, oh, look at me. I can't focus. I can't study. What's wrong with me? I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm so terrible. Like, I'm the worst studier. I'm never going to make it. This is going to be awful. Right? I want to get out of that editorializing language and get to a place where I can just be like, oh, I notice my heart rate's up a little bit, or I notice my mind keeps wandering. I wonder what's going on. Is it that what I'm reading is just really not interesting? Or is it what I'm doing is just like not sticking and maybe I need to walk away from it or pick up some different item to study for right now? Or maybe honestly, I just have done too much already and I need a break, whatever the case may be. So we can think about mindfulness as a way not just to check in, right? And ask like, what is going on? Like, do I need a break? Do I need to study something different? But we can also think of it a way as managing task unrelated thoughts, right? So I love this language of task unrelated thoughts, because the idea is that sometimes when we get these like thoughts pop into our minds, they're important, they're useful, they're things that we need to remember, but they're not related to the task. So for example, I cannot tell you how often I'll be taking an actual official exam and like it'll pop into my head that I need to think about like what I'm picking up for dinner. And I'm like, really? Like this is what we're thinking about right now. Like I really am trying to come up with this geometry formula and I'm thinking about what I need to order for dinner. Right? It's not that that's a bad or negative thought. It's just very much task unrelated. And so we're going to we practice mindfulness in our day-to-day. We practice centering with all of our studying so that on test day, when we start to get to this place where we are inevitably going to slip, right? Our thoughts are going to like wander off. When they do, we have a nice, kind, easy way to call them back. And in fact, if we do this in practice, our mind doesn't wander as much. There's like decent evidence that not even all that much mindfulness practice, exchanging 15 minutes of studying, exchanging it. So taking out 15 minutes of studying and including maybe spread throughout the day, 15 minutes of mindfulness practice, 4 days a week can have a positive impact on your score, right? So think about that. What you're doing is you're creating a mind that's better able to focus. And so that makes your studying better, and then it makes your performance better, right? So it's like a double whammy. It's awesome. And what they've found is that like a substantial amount of peer-reviewed research is starting to show that this like mindfulness, again, improves performance on these exams, not just in the moment, right? It improves your ability to learn. It improves your ability to retain. It improves your ability to recall. It improves your ability to stay focused on test day. So through all of these different avenues, we start to see the impact of training, of mind training. Just little brain training exercises. So there's a pretty famous study in this world. It was done in 2013, and it was done by some researchers at UC Santa Barbara. And it was this idea about the relationship between when I practice mindfulness and with my mind wandering. Right, with my mind wandering. And so one of the things to think about is that, you know, mind wandering is a tendency to let your mind drift, right, to these task unrelated thoughts. And so they already knew that mind wandering was problematic, that the more someone's mind wandered in mid-test, it would have a huge impact on their like working memory and their, I mean, in some ways, like what measures of intelligence. And so what we're looking for is, you know, this idea of like, they were going to test it out. Like, can we see any positive evidence? And so this is the study I was mentioning. It was a 2-week study. It was a meditation training. They did like 15 to 30 minutes a day, just 4 days a week. And they compared it with like giving some people some training on nutrition. And what they found was like pretty substantial improvement in GRE scores. Guys, this was an improvement of 16 percentile points. 16 percentile points on the verbal section. This is huge, right? This is huge, a big bump. So what we're going to do is we are going to do a couple of practice questions, but we're going to do a couple of practice questions mostly to practice kind of a sense of calm around them, what it looks like to sort of like, ooh, take it kind of easy. But not necessarily to cover a specific topic today. Yeah, that's okay. So here's my thinking, right? When we start to talk about emotion on test day, one of the things I want you to think about is this idea of emotional inertia. Right? So inertia is this idea of like an object in motion stays in motion, or an object at rest stays at rest unless it's acted upon by some external force. So I'm going to give you two scenarios. Right, so give this first one a read. And it is normal to have nightmares about it. It is true. Okay, so scenario one, I've had this lovely day. Just absolutely lovely day. But I get a flat tire on the way home from work, which is a bummer. That's no fun. Okay, but what about scenario two? I'm gonna get a same flat tire for scenario two, but which flat tire is gonna be worse? They both suck. It's the same flat tire, right? But the second flat tire is sort of one of those like scream at the sky angry moments, right? That I've already had this horrible morning. Everything's just like nothing is going my way. And now it's just like insult to injury. There were some studies done with the SAT that found that when someone struggles with a problem, that it actually can negatively impact the next 2 to 3 problems. So meaning reduces the likelihood that you get those next 2 to 3 problems right. That's a little scary. Yeah, it is. It is totally Murphy's Law. So it's a little scary that if we encounter a problem that doesn't go super duper well, that now it could in fact take out our performance on 2 or 3 problems that like we could have done well. So what we want to think about doing, and so here's where we're going to do a little bit of practice. Here's what we want to think about is that on test day, you're going to hit questions where you struggle, period. What I want you to think about is like to stop that inertia. Right? Like we have to be able to powerfully say like, hold on, I have to get back to a sense of calm before this question rattles me. Right, so we're going to practice this a little bit. We're going to think about this idea of taking a deep breath. So here they come. We're going to practice some problems. We're going to focus on quant because those are just a little bit easier to jump into. But what I want to do is I want to think about a couple of different emotional states within which we can see problems. Okay, so what I want you to do, let's get you guys a nice challenge. All right. So let's try problem. I want you to try and answer this problem as quickly as you possibly can. Right? Like I want you to work as fast as you can. And then let's see how it goes. All right. Right? Ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? You have your pen? You have your paper? You ready? We're gonna do it as fast as we can. Okay? We gotta get through this question fast as we can. All right, here goes. Let's see how quickly you can get it done. Can you do it in under a minute? Let's do it. How did it feel? How did it feel? The timer counting down 3, 2, 1. How was it? Go, go, go. How was it? Not fun, right? Some people are like, I don't know, maybe it's okay. Here's the thing is that if somebody's like, all right, we gotta get going. big old timer in my face. You better get working on this problem. You better go faster. Right? Like, it's hard to focus, right? The time is ticking in your face. What do I do? Oh my gosh, yes, we all hate math. Cindy, we all hate math. Right? It's stressful. It's really stressful. And even if the clock isn't this big on test day, it's certainly going to feel that big from time to time. Right? Like you had to, just the timer being there. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to read the question again. I have to read it again. And now I have to, oh my gosh, what are they even asking for? And with answer choices that are like, wait, I have to convert and I have to do this thing and blah, blah, blah. Like, oh my God, what a mess. Right? What a mess. And so here's the thing is that we don't want to feel that way because on test day, we don't need to feel that way. Right? There's nothing about the test that says we have to feel rushed and panicked. Nothing. Because here's the thing, let's say we work a little bit slowly. We'll just skip one question. Okay, there'll at least be one question per section, at least, that we have no idea what to do on it. So we might as well just skip it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a little quick centering exercise. Oh, we're gonna see it again. Don't worry, you'll see it again, it's coming right back. But we're gonna do a little centering exercise. Okay? And we're gonna talk about how to practice this centering exercise and then just to tap into it in a moment. We'll try this problem and then we'll try several more. Right? See if we can't just get this sort of easier sense of calm, even with a giant clock in your face. Yeah. Okay, so the centering exercise I'm going to show you guys is something that I do at the beginning of every study session. I do it in the like little 30-second or 1-minute break between sections on the test. I just like check back in. Or anytime you're feeling overwhelmed about the world. It doesn't just have to be the GRE. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is to remove any physical distractions. So, you know, if it's your phone, maybe you close a browser window, right? Like, and you'll do this normally. You'll kind of remove any physical distractions, turn your phone over, what have you. And then what we'll do to sort of get ourselves ready is to start to center or shut down some of the more mental distractions. Okay. So what we're going to do, and I'll give you the instructions and we'll do it together. It's really 3 easy steps. Super easy. Nothing too fancy. I'm not going to make you chant or or do anything that feels strange. We're just going to breathe together. And the way this will work is that we're going to start by taking 2 to 3 nice, easy, clearing breaths. Right? Just to like get out the day or the morning or whatever it is. And then we're going to do a quick body scan. So I'm going to walk you through my favorite of the body scans. And so it's just a noticing. Right? I'm just going to notice what I notice as I scan. And then last but not least, we're going to start to settle into our breath. And I'm only going to do this like breath for a couple, like maybe 2 minutes, minute and a half, 2 minutes. It'll go by very quickly. Your job is going to be to try and count to 10. And the way this works is that you'll count, like as you inhale, you'll count 1. As you exhale, you'll count 1. As you inhale, you'll count 2. As you exhale, you'll count 2. So on and so on. If and when you get to 10, you'll start back over again. Here's the thing. I've never made it to 10. I've never made it to 10. Because what happens is if your mind starts to wander, all I want you to do is say to yourself the word thinking. Right? So if your mind starts to like, this is a silly activity. My foot is numb. I want to do more math problems. I want to da, 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 da. I want you to practice. Just say thinking, come back and start counting again. So what we're doing is we're trying to get to a place where we notice when our mind wanders. How many times have you guys, show of hands, if you have been reading a reading comp passage and your eyeballs were moving and halfway through you realize that you actually don't have any idea what it just said? Yeah. So many times. Here's what we're practicing. You didn't notice anything because your mind wandered. You just didn't notice that your mind wandered. And so we practice this so that we notice when our mind wanders. That's literally the whole point of this exercise. The entire point is for you to practice noticing when your mind wanders. And so when I do this exercise, half the time as my mind wanders, I almost sort of like giggle. I'm like, there it goes again, thinking. And so you just say the word. We're not editorializing. You just say the word thinking and you come right back. Okay? All right. So get yourself comfortable. Sit up nice and tall. Up nice and tall. And then we'll start together with just 2 or 3 big, easy mind-clearing breaths. So for these, you're going to take an inhale through your nose and then an exhale out through your mouth, right? So nice, long, deep breath in. We'll do a second just like that. One more. Nice. Now you'll let yourself sit up a little bit taller. And then just take a moment to notice your feet. And notice if they feel heavy. Is it the bottoms of your feet that are on the floor? Or is it the edges of your feet if you're sitting maybe cross-legged? And you're going to follow the energy. Right? You'll just like imagine that you're tracing a line across the top of your foot, across the front of your ankle, and up along the front of your shin. And now imagine as you're tracing up the front of your shin, it's like you feel the entire way around your calf. So you'll keep following that, follow it up. You'll start to follow it over the knee. You'll follow it up through the leg. And then you'll start to notice where you meet the chair or the sofa or whatever it is that you're sitting on. And then just take a moment to notice that you are supported. Then you'll just keep following the attention, find your spine. And I like to imagine that my spine is like this little stack of coins. And so what I'm trying to do is almost like make little adjustments so that each vertebrae stacks a little bit more on top of the one below it. You're just going to follow this all the way up. Follow it through the neck. And then as you notice, let it come out over the shoulders and then follow all the way out into your arms. And so maybe you'll feel kind of a sensation of like, is the room cool or is it warm? Can you feel the clothing that you're wearing? You'll follow it out to the fingertips and just notice where your hands are resting. And if you're kind of gripping, can you just soften your fingers, let them relax a little bit? Follow the energy and like give yourself some attention back up the arms, up to the neck. And then I want you to follow along the back of the neck and along the back of your head. And it's as if like some like heat is wrapping over the top to the crown of your head. And then take your attention to the space right between your eyebrows. Take a breath in. And as you exhale, can you let that skin just soften? It's like your ears get heavy and your whole face melts. So now we're just going to take a moment to breathe together. And so you'll start to settle in and count the breath. This will only be for a very short window of time. So you're just going to start to count from 1 up to 10. The most important part is when your mind wanders, take a moment just to notice, say the word thinking, and come right back. Notice if the thoughts have wandered, and just say the word thinking. Come back to your count. We're over halfway there. And take a long breath in. Easy, let it go. You'll slowly start to blink open your eyes. And now we're going to try it again. We're going to try it again. So I won't throw the clock right in your face, but I want you to take a moment to see what would it feel like if you had all the time in the world to solve this problem. All the time in the world. If you needed to read it as slowly as possible, no problem. All right, so we'll take a look at this problem. So many people sending me a different answer this time. Sometimes what makes a problem complicated isn't that the math is all that hard. Right? This is a perfect example of a question where the math itself isn't necessarily the hard part. It's understanding what they're asking for. And one of the nice things about slowing down is that when we slow down, like that sort of mental slowdown, we can often find methods of solving a problem that aren't actually the longhand algebra. In fact, typically when we're panicking, we almost always reach for algebra. And a lot of times on the GRE, the algebra is not the most effective way to solve the problem. So if we can slow down, do we have any idea how much money Mary or Nora has? No, I have no idea. In fact, are we given any like real values other than this conversion? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so when the GRE doesn't give you any real numbers, we can get nice and calm because we get to pick our own. We get to pick our own. So Mary has half as many cents as Nora has dollars. So let's give Nora some value. Let's say that Nora has, and I like to pick kind of, weird numbers. Let's say Nora has $100, right? Let's say Nora has $100. I like that number. So Nora has $100. But Mary has half as many cents as Nora has dollars. So if Nora has $100, Mary has 50 cents. Poor Mary, she has no money. Mary has 50 cents, exactly. Okay, Nora has what percent more cents than Mary has? Well, I got to figure out how many cents does Nora have then? So she has $100. It's a pretty big number. But for every dollar, she has 100 cents. So she has, right, 10, what, thousand cents? So be careful, right? Be careful. Nora has what percent more cents than Mary does? Mary only has 50 cents. Nora has 10,000 cents. Nora has 10,000 cents, which means Nora doesn't have just 100% more, right? And we can even test out some of these numbers. 100% more than 50 cents would be 100 cents. Right? And 200% more would be not 2% of, but 200% more would be an extra 100. That would be 150 cents. Too small, right? So we can be like, those are way too small. And so the answer is going to have to be one of these two. When I want what percent more, I have to look for the difference. So I love David put this in the window really beautifully. Nora has 10,000 cents more than, so she actually has 9,950 more cents than Mary does. I'm comparing this to Mary. Right? So she has more than, so I'm comparing Nora to Mary, which means Mary goes down here. And I'm going to put that in my calculator. In other words, I could just double it, or the answer is going to be D. I know it has to be huge. I know it has to be so big because Nora has so much more than Mary. Right? So much more than Mary. Now, if you haven't done much with what we'd call like plugging in numbers or smart numbers, we have a couple of really awesome YouTube lessons on it. So I would definitely check those out. But let's try another one. Let's try another one. Let's try this one. Okay, so let's find our moment to take a deep breath. Easy peasy, all the time in the world. So what do you notice about this problem? What do you notice about this problem? Yeah, it looks a lot like that other one. There's no numbers. There's no numbers. So if I can stay nice and calm, right, and not sort of get hung up on like, oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do? Ah! I can start to organize my thinking. Okay, I've got jeans and chinos. Okay, so let's go with jeans and chinos. I'm just gonna kind of organize my thinking here. Okay, number. Let's see how many we sold, like pairs. I sold 3 times as many pairs of jeans as chinos. I'm going to pretend I sold 3 pairs of jeans and 1 pair of chinos. Why not? I made twice as much profit from a pair of chinos. So let's say profit. I made $2 in profit on a pair of chinos, and I made only $1 in profit per pair of jeans. So twice as much profit for chinos and jeans. Cool. And I didn't sell anything else. So what percent of my profit? So this is profit per pair. So how much profit did I make total on jeans? What's my total profit on jeans? I made $3. Look at me go. Total profit. Which by that same logic, if I only sold 1 pair of chinos, but I made $2 in profit, I made $2. So my total profit was $5. I'm gonna say nice and calm, no big deal. I'm not doing a bunch of algebra, so why not? What percent came from chinos? 2/5, which is the same as 40%. When we can stay calm, we can avoid crazy math. We can find opportunities for plugging in numbers or working with the answer choices, right? The beauty is this place of like, I'm just going to take a breath. Just going to take a breath. Right? All I'm going to do is take a little easy breath. No big deal. Why is it so simple? Because the algebra is terrible, right? But if we can stay calm, we don't tend to reach for what we do when we're like having a sense of urgency, right? Like when we're freaking out, it's like algebra. Oh my God, algebra saved me. Math saved me. Calculator saved me. It all should save me. If we can take a breath and go, hold on. There are no real numbers here. What if I just plug in my own? What if I just estimate with the answer choices? What if I just estimate? Yeah. So there's this like beautiful thing, right? This beautiful thing for a sense of calm. And I love that. Like, I feel like I don't know how to get to this point when there are no numbers, right? And I get nervous. For sure. But that's the point. You're going to take another breath. And you're like, okay, here's what I learned. If there aren't any real numbers, I'm going to pick my own. Now, in order to do that, I need to keep breathing. Okay? Gotta keep breathing. So the secret to these types of problems, and this is what I was saying, is that check out our YouTube channel. We have an entire lesson on picking numbers on the GRE, right? An entire lesson on how to think about plugging in your own numbers and using estimation. We actually have like 2 lessons. And so to do more work on these so that when you're on test day and you take that breath, you know how to approach them. We've got tons, right? We've got tons of information for this on our YouTube channel. But what I wanted you to see is that coming from a place of calm, sometimes the way to solve a problem becomes far more evident. We don't fight with it anymore, right? We let ourselves understand it a little bit more carefully. We can read and not make these like bad assumptions and careless mistakes. And so I just want to invite you while you're studying, right? Maybe you just practice 30 seconds, 60 seconds of just like closing your eyes, taking a couple of deep breaths. Maybe you just do like an easy body scan, count your breaths. You could do the whole thing in 3 minutes. I do this before every single study session. I do this before every practice exam. I do this before every real exam. And I do it between the sections for like a little quick, just couple of breaths. Come back in, recenter. Before every single question, every single one, I stop. Take a deep breath. Yeah. All right, guys. I have several questions in the Q&A. Oh, this before RC is money. Like they're in a better place for it than for RC. Money. Now, to make sure that I have plenty of time to answer some of the Q&A that are in the window, I'm going to go ahead and get started on those. But like I said, we have a ton of problems. And anytime you're working on practice problems, stop, take a breath. Right? Like give yourself a chance to come at problems from a sense of calm. Now, several questions. How can I improve RC? So one of the questions was, would strategically taking as many practice tests as possible help? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The number one way to improve on verbal is through a thorough review. So every time you do a problem, Every time you do one, what you want to do is check and make sure that when you eliminate answers, that you are eliminating them for very precise logic. Usually what happens with folks when they struggle with RC is that they're not super precise with when they're getting like eliminating answer choices. And they're like, well, this seems wrong, I'll get rid of it. And so sometimes they're just getting lucky. The other big thing about improving RC is actually taking a breath and slowing down your read. People read way too quickly on the GRE, and so end up kind of like cutting themselves off at the knees because they read too fast and then ended up spending way too much time answering the individual questions. So number one thing for RC is going to be to slow down for your read. And then when you review, make sure that you're being really precise with your logic for why you picked the right answer and why you eliminated the wrong answers. Exponents on the GRE, you've got the little square root symbol, but otherwise you're just going to need to like multiply through. There won't be any like easy way to do the shortcut of exponents, unfortunately. Right, so you want to learn your exponent rules to help save some time that way. I wouldn't feel discouraged about, I got a question for my GRE exam is in late September. I feel so discouraged. I want to raise my score by 15 points. That is a lot of points, but it depends on where you are, right? Like if you're talking about trying to get up from a 157 and you want to get a 170, that's a ton of points. But if you're trying to move from a 150 to a 157, and then you're doing that on both sections, or you're trying to move from a 157 to a 161 or somewhere in that space, like totally doable. You can totally do that by the end of September. You've got 3 months, 2.5 months. So plenty of time. Don't feel discouraged, just keep breathing. Some GREs are waived, so you'll have to talk to your program. Some programs are waiving GREs. Some programs are allowing people to submit SAT or ACT scores. So you'll have to confirm that with your program. The home version is the same test, but you don't get the same break schedule. And so it is a little bit different. You don't get scratch paper. You can get, you can either use a whiteboard or you can use, you know, those like laminated sleeves that you can slide a piece of paper in. And then you have to write with an erasable, so like wet or a dry erase pen. I'm asking my university wants me only the quantitative. If your university is like, we only care about your quant score, I don't care about any of your other scores, I would confirm with them, like, can I skip the verbal? Can I skip the essay? And they may say yes, but that would be a question for your university. Great question. How do you know when you're finished studying? I've been studying for about a month and a half, and I feel like I have a good grasp of the material. But how on earth can it be possible that I'm finished studying? It feels endless. The key is do your practice test scores match your goal score. At that point, you're done studying. Like there's the easy answer. How many points can you raise in a month? It depends. So if you're brand new to studying and you don't understand the question types, then just doing a little bit of studying can bump your score up pretty quickly. However, if you've been studying for a while and it's more like refining that you need, then that can take a little bit longer. So there's not an easy answer for like how many points. It'll also depend on where you are. To move from a 160 to a 162 is a harder thing than to move from a 150 to a 152. So as the scores get higher, each additional point is harder to achieve. What would be a good schedule for having only 1 month to study? I would say that you still don't want to exceed about 20 hours a week, 20 to 25 hours a week. Lots of breaks, lots and lots of breaks. Take a practice exam every other week. So you'll take one at the beginning of the month, wait 2 weeks to take one, and then take one each week until you're 1 week out from your exam. Use your practice exams to tell you what to study so that they can like send you to the right pieces. Keyways, yeah, well, so we talked about those, our little mindfulness keyways. Taking the GRE next Friday, based in New York City and had the test delayed twice, total of 3 months now due to COVID. Due to this, I have no choice but to change gears and take it from home. According to my latest ETS power praise, what are your recommendations for my study strategy? Cool. The last 2 weeks before an exam, what I would say is no new information. No new information the last 2 weeks for the exam. You take a practice exam, wait a week, practice exam, wait a week, take the real exam. You're working on trying to perfect your game day performance. So breathing, timing, and then understanding which questions you want to make sure that you do or you do early and which questions you'd like to skip completely or maybe bail and come back to. So primarily those last 2 weeks, you're focusing on trying to like smooth, refine, and then practice your process. Testing remotely. We do have a bunch of stuff on our site, and we've got a bunch of YouTube videos about like how to handle the test remotely. So I'll send you guys to those. How do you sign up for more prep sessions? We've got free GRE prep hours all the time. So you'll just find them on our site. You can also sign up for any session one of any course that we teach. You can sign up for session one for free. You don't even have to give us a card or anything. You just come and you can learn all about the QC question types. You'll learn about reading comp, tons of great tips for reading comp. So definitely sign up for those. GRE on Saturday. You cannot take 3 to 4 practice exams. You can take 1, because the last thing you ever want is to take so many practice exams, which is more than 1, and then you're going to be tired on test day. You want to peak on test day. So at most, if you're taking it on Saturday, you could take a practice exam tomorrow, but no more. That is it. That is it. It is possible to do well in quant, as you saw from the problem that we worked on. It's possible to do well in quant because we live in a world and we think quantitatively. So what you're looking for are alternatives to algebra, and everybody's looking for those. Everybody's looking for those. Last week before the test, what you're trying to do is, again, you're trying to refine and you're trying to keep yourself from overwhelming. You do not want to burn out. You do not want to get tired. You want to rest. You want to do things that are rejuvenating. And you want to do nothing GRE related for the 2 to 3 days right before the exam. Walk away from it. Go enjoy yourself. Come to the test the most refreshed version of you. We don't have a yellow pad technique for the GRE because you can bounce around. But what I do tell people is that halfway mark, so 15 or 17 and a half minutes, depending on quant or verbal, halfway mark, open up your review screen and make sure that you have seen and answered about half of the questions. So that way you know you're on time. Prep yourself. It's going to depend on how your first practice exam goes. We have a bunch of great resources on the site for how to take a practice exam and review it. And that way you can start to see what areas need focus, and you can kind of budget your time that way. You can't, I do not think you can use the yellow pad, our yellow pad for the at-home GRE. Test on Wednesday. You should be doing nothing between now and then but resting. Do nothing but rest. 4 months to study. I would look at finding either like maybe a self-study program where you can have someone like either a live person or an asynchronous program help you arrange your time. 4 months is a really long time. And so doing 4 months all by yourself can feel very like unmoored. So there are a lot of great products out there that are self-study products, just from like books and syllabi to things like our Interact product or even a course. So with that much time, you definitely want to spend a little bit more. You'd want to find some sort of like syllabus, even if it's just an easy syllabus that comes along with a couple of books. Our practice tests do accurately represent them. I actually don't recommend doing reading comprehension last. I like to do the long reading comprehension pretty early because I want to have plenty of time to do the long passage with as many questions. The thing I do save for last are any RC passages where there's only one question. I usually do those last. Cool. Master list of content. There isn't. I mean, we've got our books and that covers everything you could possibly need, but it's not so much of a list. And again, we've got like our one, like all the quant book. That's a really great way to kind of get all of the resources in one place. And I think it looks like, and yeah, some schools may opt out of the GRE. You'll have to check with them. It just depends. Cool. As far as the essays, you're looking to, I always just tell people you want, 400 words and you'd like 4 to 5 paragraphs. But feeling easy, should I sign up for another exam? I always plan to take the exam twice. I always have my students plan to take it twice. Cool. All right, well, it looks like I got almost everything in the window. Thank you guys so much. Right? Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. And the question in the window is, how many quant questions should you skip? You should skip any that you don't know how to do, which is going to be more than a couple. So feel free to skip as many as you need. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, your morning, your afternoon, all the different locations where you are. Good luck with your GRE studying. Good luck. Take some breathing. Take it nice and slow, nice and easy. Enjoy your studies. Right? it actually can be kind of fun. But have a lovely rest of your study schedule, and hopefully we will see you around.